What happens when a successful, hardworking CEO steps into his own company, disguised as a regular employee, only to face the reality of what's happening under his watch? Can one man really change the course of an empire he's built, or will he crumble under the pressure? Let's dive in and see. The story begins with a man named Luke Hollingsworth, a name synonymous with success, wealth, and dominance in the car dealership world. Luke had built his empire from the ground up, turning his small, family-owned dealership into a nationwide name. A self-made man, he'd worked tirelessly, day and night, to get to the top. His face was everywhere, on billboards, magazines, and TV commercials. His reputation as a businessman was unmatched. Yet, despite his success, there was something that had always nagged at him. He couldn't shake the feeling that his employees, especially the ones on the sales floor, weren't being entirely honest with him. He had heard rumors about the shady practices going on at some of his dealerships, but it was all too easy to dismiss them as jealousy from competitors or disgruntled former employees. But what if those rumors were true? Luke, for all his achievements, had never actually set foot in one of his own showrooms under normal circumstances. He was always the businessman, the figurehead, never the everyday man who worked on the ground. So, after weeks of agonizing over the rumors, he made a bold decision. He would go undercover. No one would recognize him, not with his scruffy disguise, a simple baseball cap, a pair of sunglasses, and a faded jacket. No one would suspect that this unassuming man, walking through the showroom floor, was the CEO himself. He walked into the dealership early one morning, when the showroom was still quiet, and surveyed the rows of shiny cars, some gleaming in the fluorescent lights, others gathering dust. The smell of fresh leather mixed with the faint scent of coffee from the break room. It felt like any other dealership, but there was a nagging sense of unease in the air. "Hey there, you need help with something?" A voice broke him out of his thoughts. Luke turned to find a young man standing beside him. His name tag read Tommy. He was in his late 20s, wiry, with messy brown hair and a hesitant smile. There was something about Tommy's energy, nervous, almost like he wasn't sure whether he should be here or not. Luke could see right through him. He was just a salesman trying to make ends meet. But there was something else behind his eyes, something darker. "I'm just browsing," Luke said, trying to sound casual. "Maybe I'll take a test drive later." Tommy nodded, but Luke noticed how his hands shook slightly as he led him toward a row of sports cars. "You know," Tommy continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper, "we're getting a lot of complaints about the deals we're offering customers. A lot of them feel like they're getting scammed, but you didn't hear that from me." Luke raised an eyebrow. "Scammed? How?" Tommy looked over his shoulder, ensuring no one was listening. "It's not just the prices. There's something going on behind the scenes. Employees are getting bonuses for pushing people into higher-priced models, even when they can't afford them. And some cars, well, they have hidden issues. Nobody talks about it. They don't want to lose their jobs, but something's wrong." Luke's gut twisted. Was this the moment of truth? Was Tommy one of the good guys, trying to do the right thing? Or was he just another cog in a machine, pushing people into bad deals? "Who's in charge of this?" Luke asked, trying to stay calm, his mind racing. Tommy hesitated, his eyes darting nervously around the room before leaning in closer. "It's not the salespeople. It's Chris Mitchell, the finance manager. He's the one calling the shots. He's the one pulling the strings. Trust me, this place isn't what it seems." Luke's heart dropped. Chris Mitchell? The name didn't sound familiar, but the more he thought about it, the more it made sense. Someone in a position of power could easily manipulate the system for personal gain. He needed to know more, but Tommy had already backed away, offering no further details. Still, something didn't sit right. Luke thanked Tommy, who quickly vanished into the crowd of employees, and made his way to the back office where Chris Mitchell worked. The door was slightly ajar, and through the gap, Luke could see Chris hunched over a desk, his eyes glued to a computer screen. Without thinking twice, Luke slipped into the office. Chris looked up, startled at first, then grinned when he saw who it was. "Oh, hey, man. Didn't see you there. You looking for a deal today?" Luke took a deep breath, keeping his voice steady. "I'm actually not here for a car. I've heard some things, Chris, and I want to get to the bottom of it." Chris's face tightened, but he quickly regained his composure. "What kind of things?" Luke let the silence linger, his gaze unflinching. "You're the one who's been calling the shots around here, right? Manipulating deals, hiding defects in cars. Tommy told me everything." Chris's eyes darkened. "Tommy? That rat's trying to get people fired. He doesn't know what he's talking about." For a moment, Luke thought about walking away. Maybe it was all just a misunderstanding. Maybe Tommy was wrong. But deep down, something told him that wasn't the case. Before he could respond, Chris leaned forward, his voice lowering to a threatening tone. "You're not going to get very far, Luke," he said, sneering. "People like you never do. You think you can come in here and change everything? You're just a face on a billboard. You don't know what it's like to actually run things on the ground." Luke felt a pang in his chest. There was truth in Chris's words. He had been too distant, too absorbed in the big picture, never taking the time to understand the struggles of his employees. But now, as the reality of the situation hit him, he realized how much he'd overlooked. As he stood there, grappling with the weight of Chris's words, there was a sudden knock at the door. Tommy barged in, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear. "You need to leave, Luke. Now. Chris is setting you up. He's got the whole place on his side, and if you don't get out now, they'll have everything on you. They've been watching." Luke felt a chill run down his spine. It was all a setup. Chris had been manipulating everything from the start, using Tommy as a pawn to lure him into a trap. But now, Tommy had become his unexpected ally, his whistleblower, willing to risk everything to expose the truth. The realization hit hard. Luke had been too blind to see what was right in front of him. But now he had a choice. He could let the corruption continue, or he could fight back. He turned to Tommy, his resolve hardening. "We're not going down without a fight. We'll bring this whole thing to light." Over the next few weeks, Luke and Tommy worked together to gather evidence, exposing Chris and the rest of his team for their crimes. It wasn't easy, and at times, Luke felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was uncovering. But with every document, every piece of evidence, the pieces began to fall into place. Eventually, the truth came out. Chris was fired, along with several other employees who had been complicit in the fraud. The dealership underwent a massive overhaul, and Luke made it his mission to ensure that every employee, from the sales floor to the finance office, was treated with respect and dignity. Luke learned a hard lesson that day. Success wasn't just about the numbers, the cars, or the bottom line. It was about people, the ones who worked tirelessly behind the scenes, who trusted him to lead with integrity. And as for Tommy, he became one of Luke's most trusted allies, proving that sometimes the real heroes were the ones who had the courage to speak out, even when it seemed like the odds were stacked against them. Luke walked into his office that morning, his mind clearer than it had been in years. He knew he couldn't change the past, but he could shape the future. And as he stared out of his office window, looking at the dealership below, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. That's the story, friends. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure sharing it with you all. Don't forget to comment below and let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see the global reach of these stories. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories, tips, and tricks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. If you'd like to show some extra love, tap the 3 dots near the share button and send a super thanks.